Run it. Good evening. Thank you for tuning in to Moroccan Post News. This is our third installation of the outlet as we got started. I am Tamara L. To my right, we have Abdullah L. Talib Mosi Bay, author of More Than Masonry, Masonic Compass and Square, How Her Venus and Moon Rules, Etymology and Vocabulary. We have to my far right, Shem Malachi Bay, over 15-year jurist that handles cases throughout all of Maxim. And once again, myself, Tamara L., project manager, as well as a newly philanthropist, and also helping to liberate our people in the community. Now, before we get started, let's just talk about what is Moroccan Post. Moroccan Post is a monthly digital news outlet addressing yesterday's events for today's information and tomorrow's news. Now, you can find Moroccan Post News on our new YouTube page, so please go and subscribe to Moroccan Post News. And also, we have Moroccan Post newspaper coming soon. Now, our feature editor will be Abdullah L. Talib Mosi Bay, and we'll also be looking out for other Moors throughout the Maxim that would love to be a part of Moroccan Post News to help bring and shed more light and awaken our people to their national principles. So stay tuned. Like I said, we also have Moroccan Post on our Facebook page. So we have Moroccan Post on our Facebook page, and our YouTube page is Moroccan Post News. So please tune in because we'll be delivering a lot of our content on those platforms. As well, we have our website that we're utilizing at UnitedRepublicofMorocco.org. That information will stroll across the stream. Is that .com? No, it's .org. Either one, .com or .org, you'll reach it. Yes. Now, we like to also thank our sponsors and supporters who have supported and will continue to support Moroccan Post News, as well as the work that we are doing as caucus leaders. Want to talk about the caucus? Want to give some information about the caucus and who we are and how we came to be?
Yes. Me and Professor Abdullah reconnected back in 2019. We reconnected, and then Tamara was already on the platform working with Professor Abdullah on teaching etymology and tricks, traps, and trades on the language and grammar, which is very important. Abdullah introduced Tamara to me, and we sat down and we met one time. And all three of us agree that we have to educate and form a caucus body. That way we can display what is government structure. So we got together and we formed a caucus, and through the expertise of Tamara and the teaching of Abdullah with language, and I'm teaching international law, we was able to educate the caucus and bring them up to maturity, illuminate them and educate them where though they can be able to function in a capacity as if they was a public official, a government official. And from there, we have examined the case law. We went back to the foundation. We look back. We look at principle. We look at grammar. We look at how language is presented. Is the original intent of the word being used? And then we look at the tracks, trips, and trades. And from there, we've been moving on, and we've been passing this down. We Abdullah Bay and Tamara came up and formed the university and said that would be a proper way to educate the mass Moors that's scattered out throughout Morocco, so they can have a means of understanding contract law, constitutional law, government structure, diplomatic relationships, and treaty protection on the alienation. So that's how that happened. Ever since then, we've been moving as a force and getting the salvation and redemption to our people that really need it.
Speaking of education, that is one of our sponsors of Moroccan Post News, Academy of Providence. Please go to our website of academyofprovidence.org. You can also put in academyofprovidence.com. You will still get to the same site. So academyofprovidence.org. And let's just go ahead and pay our sponsors. Yes, I will get there. Yes, go ahead and give our sponsors some love.
Are you a deep diver for knowledge? Do you like to explore historical content of language, grammar, and law? Well, Academy of Providence is a unique certificate-based virtual learning institution with an aim to draw out a person's innate talents and abilities by imparting the knowledge of languages, epistemology, scientific reasoning, jurisprudence, positive law, history, literature, rhetoric, and more. The channels through which those abilities would flourish and serve the communities as well as the nation. Our goal is to help you dive deep into critically analysis, thinking and reasoning of these areas towards becoming philosophers or humanity of learning or humanity of science, which creates societies great artists, painters, musicians, jurists, doctors, astronomers, biologists, engineers, cartographers, surveyors, photographers, chemists, herbalists, entrepreneurs, computer scientists, teachers, politicians, and statesmen. So, if you are determined and willing to go beyond, Academy of Providence is the perfect place for you. For more information, visit our website, www.academyofprovidence.org.
All right. Thank you, Academy of Providence, for your support. Now, our Blog Talk Radio, which is State of the Nationals, was originally, we started that in 2020, and we ran for a 4-year. Now we're going to start back up our Blog Talk Radio, State of the Nationals, but we're also adding another element to that. We are partnering up with Crom TV. And starting on Sunday, State of the Nationals will be featured on Crom TV at Sunday at 3 p.m. to 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So tune in. We will post the flyer on our website as well as our Facebook page and our YouTube page as well. So please tune in Sunday at 3 to 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. State of the Nationals will be featured on Crom TV. Now, last episode, we started off with Checkmate, part 1 of Checkmate. The Crown owns the United States. Now, the United States is not a successor of the British Crown. In the last video, you will see where we talked about it has been told in the school systems of all grade levels that the United States defeated the British English Crown in the Revolutionary War. And as a result of that, the sovereign authority over all the 13 British English colonies in 1783 became sovereign. So we showed within that last episode of part 1 of Checkmate, the Crown owned the U.S., where the United States is the fiduciary guardian of the British Crown. Now, Shem, if you would, could you elaborate on fiduciary? We want to just give a recap of that before we go into part 2 of that series, so that way you can understand where we're going with this. Keep in mind, as we said, Moroccan Post, our goal is to bridge yesterday's information. So we're here to show how yesterday's information for today's news and tomorrow events correlates one to another. So if you would, Shem, could you go over the fiduciary responsibility of the United States as being a guardian of the British Crown?
Yes. Once the new states was formed and they was allowed to go back into the colony territory, these are like new corporations. These are corporate states able to go back in the industry, corporation to run the industry. Once they was allowed to do that, based on a 1783 treaty, there was trustee and fiduciary responsibility on the United States, and the function of Congress was invested with the sovereign power, the inherent power. That power means to manage the colony affairs, and the colony affair as a new corporation. The courts, the judiciary became the fiduciary. So the branch is part of the United States. I will break it down. The parliament is the trustees, because they was invested like a trust. The settler invested into the trustees certain duties, and they was given certain duties invested to Congress. The judiciary was the fiduciaries, meaning settling disputes and discharging of debts during the court system. So by becoming the new corporate states through the 1783 treaty, they was allowed to run the affairs of the crown. They was relinquished, they go back, we still pull the troops back, we'll let you run the affairs. Now, the reason why somebody said, well, how can they be trustees? Well, they didn't have any money, number one. In order to circulate money in the colony territory, it had to be in the control of the crown, permission. That's number one. In order to regulate commerce and trade merchandise, goods, all that fell into the treaty, commerce, peace. Now, in order for when disputes arise over trade, land, jurisdictional boundaries, and old possession claims, the courts settle disputes, fiduciary, and discharge their duties. So the United States took on that responsibility. And remember, the people, they had to tax the goods, the commerce, give license. They had the authority to operate in the capacity of the Lord Proprietors. See, you got to go back to the old colony charter. You see how the Lord Proprietors appointed a special commission. They appointed a governor. Sometimes they act as the governor. And then appeals were even heard by the Lord Proprietors. So that power that the Lord Proprietors had, when the esquires wrote the instrument, they allow Congress to have that invested power over the people. Congress could not do that unless the settler created that, wrote that power, and delegated to them. So this is why United States Congress is the trustees. Right now, with money to the budget, any money get released from the Cessation Trust, which is the Social Security Fund, or Survivor Pension Benefit Fund, Congress have to go into legislature and pass legislature in order for the money to be released. Once the money is released, if it's not how it's settled the debts and goes into the states to operate, once that is not done right, then they go into the courts. And the courts take over the fiduciary duties to discharge their debts, to settle any disputes. See, when you're settling disputes.
Hold on. I don't want you to go too fast.
Yes.
Because you're talking about the elements of a trust.
Yes.
You're actually
yes.
breaking down the three elements of a trust.
Yes.
Now, you mentioned a settler.
Yes.
And the settler of this Constitution is whom?
The settler is the Lord Proprietors, the esquires. The esquires are hired to write the Constitution. So the esquires are the drafters. I mean, they are considered the jurists that's putting together, but upon the instructions and permission of the Lord Proprietors.
Okay. Now, the second element of a trust would be the trustee.
Yes.
Okay, so within this Constitution, who's the trustee of this Constitution? Congress.
The vested powers in Congress.
The vested powers in Congress. Okay, now you have what you call beneficiaries. I know you heard the third party to a trust is their beneficiaries. Now, I heard you say the word, the French word, "cessation," yes, which is a French word for beneficiary.
Yes.
Okay, so whom will be the beneficiary of this trust, this constitutional trust?
Okay. You got the benefactors, you got the beneficiaries. The benefactors are the Pope, the Catholic magistrate. The co-benefactor, that's a co-benefactor. The benefactors are the Crown and the Privacy Council. They're the benefactors of everything. From there, they deal with the exchanger or the settler. That means those that they give permission or grant letters of patent or grant them a charter.
So are subjects beneficiaries of the trust?
Subjects can be beneficiaries of the trust, depending how the instrument.
I'm talking about of this Constitution.
Yes, and under the Constitution.
Under
they
the
are
Constitution.
Yes, they are the benefit.
So the subjects are beneficiaries
Yes.
of the Constitution.
Yes.
Now, within any trust, can a beneficiary make any changes to that trust?
Based on let me say this. I want to, when you're dealing with a state law, ecclesiastical, you're dealing with state, you're dealing with corporate souls, corporate soul trusts.
Right.
Corporate soul trusts. The ecclesiastical body, the estate, private state body, dealing with the tribes and clans, and the corporate trust is three different things. You and I can be very wealthy in the empire. And what we would do was, when we do a trust, we would do what you call a legacy trust, a dynasty trust. We will be the exchangers. Then we will have the trustees that we appointed. Then we'll have our successors and descent and kinsmanship as the beneficiaries. We will base the trust on descent, kinsmanship, pedigree, consanguinity. That's different. Ecclesiastical trust is made when the seer gives a people a patent to go to the specific portion of the earth and to possess it based on the unseen, the power of the unseen world conveying to its seer. It ordained a seer, and it ordains that power, gives possession to a nation, the domicile, to take this portion of the earth as a domicile. The corporate trust is when the people, when the powers of the estate, that means estate. When I say estate, that's descent, that's consanguinity, allow to people to self-determine in their dominion and realm separately. They're still the same people, but they allow them to operate as a corporation. And what they do is they relinquish certain portions of the estate so they can run their corporate business as a population, self-determined. They draft up a constitution. The constitution, the parties that's not willing to be a part of the estate, to be separate, they become the beneficiaries of that corporate trust. There was a social trust. They become the beneficiaries of that.
So is the U.S. Constitution more of a split interest trust, such as a private and charitable trust, or is it a full charitable trust?
It's not a charitable trust. It's a corporate trust. That means they
So it's a private trust.
That's right. But they operating based on the powers of the benefactor, the co-benefactor. Remember, the benefactor gets everything. That's who control everything. The benefactor and the co-benefactor controls everything. The settler gets his power from the benefactor. The exchanger is someone that's of royal pedigree. Like, for instance, in the family of the dukes, the earls, the counts, the barons, the marquis, you go down right. These are kinsmanship. These are descent. This is why Professor Abdullah was teaching one time how they have these symbols. These are symbols or part of clans, representing the clan. The names are tied to clan. Like McKellen, they tied to clan. When McKellen are receiving what you call a portion of the estate trust based on pedigree, descent. That's a difference. That's a totally different trust. The United States Constitution doesn't that, because them trusts supersede that Constitution, the social trust, that corporate social trust. This is why the Supreme Court is litigating. It always make reference that title is not in the state.
Okay, now you're gonna have to back that up because we don't want you to run this too fast. Tie that in to today's information. Tie that into today. How is this Constitution? Because one would say, okay, I'm watching these lectures and I'm trying to get an understanding of its importance and how does this trust, that this Constitution and trust, which is a trust, how is it this trust that was set up years ago, how does this affect me today? And how am I a party to it? How am I able to operate in it, around it, out of it, not be a part of it, Because I hear a body of people that say that we're not a party, we're not part and parcel to this constitutional trust. You know, we're a separate body. Could you explain, Abdullah? Abdullah, I want to hear from you. I want to hear from you. How is this constitutional trust a party? How does it affect the people of today?
All right, so let me give you something that's well settled, because it's important that we understand jurisprudence and we're going to look back. All right, let's look at some instruments. So the question on the floor: are Moors part and parcel of the United States? Let's look at that. You have the Guadalupe Treaty, the treaty between Mexico and the United States. Article 3 of that treaty is the citizenship article. The Mexicans had a choice that the 1 year to decide to maintain to be citizens of Mexico or to become citizens of the United States by treaty, not by immigration, not by naturalization, by treaty. That is Article 3 of that treaty. That's a citizenship article of that treaty. Then you have the 1803 Louisiana Purchase Treaty between United States and France. There's also a citizenship article in that treaty. They were French nationals. Let me back up. From 1656 to 1763, France had control of that Louisiana area, also Canada, up until that 1763 treaty between France and Great Britain, where France ceded a large portion of Moorish land to Great Britain. There were French subjects still there. Now, also in that part of that treaty negotiation, that Great Britain also made deals with Spain that France would cede Louisiana to Spain in 1762, the Treaty of Talib in 1762. So now Spain has control of the Louisiana area up until 1801, when Spain ceded the land back to France. Now, France in the treaty, Louisiana Purchase Treaty, sold that area to United States. There were French subjects still there. So in that treaty, French subjects still could become citizens of the United States by not by naturalization, with that treaty. Why did I bring this up? The question on the floor: where is the treaty between the Empire of Morocco and the United States that allowed that where the Emperor of Morocco negotiated in a treaty for Moors to be citizens of the United States? Now, we know this Treaty of Peace and Friendship between the Emperor of Morocco and the United States of 1787, but there's no citizenship clause in that treaty. The reason we went back, we have to look at what's well settled. Where is the treaty? How did Moors become citizens of the United States? How did Mexicans become citizens of the United States? I just mentioned the treaty. How did the French who lived in Louisiana in 1703 become citizens of the United States? The Treaty of 1803 treaty between France and the United States. So I'm looking back, that's something that's well settled. All right, so.
What about black, Negro, and colors?
All right, those are fictions of law. There's no such people that ever existed. No one on the planet, no one that ever lived met a black, Negro, colored. No one who ever lived on this planet met a black, Negro, colored. an Indian, you cannot meet some that because it doesn't exist. It's a fiction in law. I'm just breaking it down. A fiction in law. You cannot meet a fiction in law.
All right, let's get into it. Part 2, Checkmate. The Crown owns the United States. Now, we're going to look at these British moves in the creation of the United States. Now, the creation of European newly created states, counties, cities, towns, etc., they have to go through a process. You have to go through a process. The first process is population. You must have a well-defined population in order to start a provincial body politic, in order to create a political society in order to govern. So you have to have a well-defined population. And within that population, number 2 must be constitution and charters of the newly created states, counties, cities, municipalities, towns, townships, and boroughs. Now, one would think that unity, they say, oh, we unite, we march, we pray, we sweat, we do all these things in unity, and we should come together in unity. But there's been long standings have shown that marching, sweating, campaigns, all those likes is not a form of creating a population, a political body. It takes a constitution. So that's one of the main elements that is missing within the liberation and unity, true unity. I'm just going to say true unity. You just put unity, true unity of people who has been misclassified and misnomered as Black, Negro, colored. That's one of the key elements that is missing, a defined constitution and charters. Now, there's well-settled constitutions that our ancient ancestors had laid out, which is the Audubon Confederate Constitution, which is well-settled wampums, agreements in which six different sovereign Moorish nations confederated means to come together. They came together and formed one federal government. Now, going to, I know there's been some, I want to kind of pause this a little bit because there's some misconfusions between the word federal. Well, let me back up. Republic, federal, national government. It sounds great, but it's incorrect as far as its applications of understanding. Could you go into the workings and understanding of republic, federal, national government?
All right, I'm going to do a distinction between Confederate and national. All right, so you have FID is the root word for Confederation. All right, so you have the faith, the CON is the prefix together. A confederation is a league of states. When you have independent sovereign states, i.e. the Haudenosaunee, all right? Those are 5 sovereign states. That is a federal government. The Haudenosaunee or Iroquois Confederation is a federal government. That is a confederation or a league of 5 independent, free, sovereign states that agreed to come together under one constitution. That is a federal government. A national government. So federal government is where the power is derived from the states, i.e. the 5 independent, free, sovereign states of the Haudenosaunee, all right, Confederation.
Which is like the Onondaga, the Cayuga,
yes,
the Seneca, the Mohawk, those Lenape.
And they're independent, free, sovereign, independent states that came together under one constitution. That's a federal government. A national government is where the power is derived from the people. You got 1 million, a population of 1 million, population of 5 million, population of 10 million. They're not states. States are not coming together. All right. They don't form states. They bring a population of 5 million, 10 million under a national constitution. The power is derived from the people. That is a national government. You cannot have a federal and national government at the same time. It cannot. That is not well settled. You can't have a national government and a federal government at the same time to say, well, this is a federal national. That's not. Once again, it's either a national government or it's either a federal government. It can't be both. By definition, by process, by principles, by well settled, it cannot be both. It's understanding what words are. Then we have republic. Res publica. The res is things, matters, and affairs. The etymology, publica, is people. So matters, affairs, things of the people. So once again, so you have a Republican form of government. So we're looking at form of government. All right, Republican, because you can have a national government that's a republic. Right. I mean, your national government where the power is derived from the people. All right, you have a Confederate government that is where you look at it can also be a republic. It means you have the independent, free, sovereign states. All right, so it's understanding language, the etymology, the true intent of words, the well-settled meaning of words. So this is so very important to understand language.
All right, now I'm going to combine the third and fourth elements of creation of European newly created states, counties, cities, towns, etc. Just want to keep everything on point. The third and fourth element, and this is where I want Shem to get into. The third element is survey, and the fourth element is architectural drawing and engineer development plan. Now, keep in mind, we did not say land. We said, now we're talking about creation of European newly created states, counties, cities, towns, etc. Survey, number 3, number 4, architectural drawings and engineering development plan, which means that these states are mere on paper. Now, when we're talking about this, I want Shem to go into jurisdiction in relations to survey, architectural drawings, and engineering development plan.
Yes. We're going to look back first at one of the books that is being misused is a positive law dealing with culture and jurisprudence books dealing with equity is the Bible. In the Bible, the seer don't move an old property line. These lines can never be removed because they were set by a seer. From the river of so-and-so to the lake of so-and-so to the mountain of so-and-so to the rock of so-and-so. No modern state can draw up a survey map to ever remove that was already promised to a people anciently. The people that descent and kinsmanship of them people, no matter if they go under conquest by war, please hear me out. Once the peace is settled after the war, the ruling sultan or emperor or king always allowed the nation to possess the ancient right to culture and their monarchy and their government, as long as the allegiance is to the sultan, the head emperor or empress. This is the known. I'm looking back. I got to look back to answer this. When you see the new survey maps, treaties entered by new communities, I call them communities, new tribes that are formed on the earth, and they sign treaties with the descent of these people, the descent and kinsmanship. And when they sign these succession treaties and they draw up these maps, they're not territorial maps. They have no effect absolutely whatsoever over the territorial sovereignty that was conveyed by the seers or the prophetess, the foreseers, that first drawn out. No one can remove that. What happens is that sovereign allows that foreign government to exercise a jurisdiction. A jurisdiction is like a shelf. Let me explain what I mean. A shelf is something connected to the seaboard. That's the soil, like a house, a bridge, or an erection, excavation placed in the ground. That's considered a shelf. The political jurisdiction occupying jurisdiction is only in what is built or what is occupied by that foreign sovereign on the permission of that foreign government. Territorial sovereignty means fishing, agriculture, minerals, and wealth. That's not tied to conquest or occupying sovereignty. The occupying sovereign is allowed to use it, to do it based on a peace treaty, a commerce treaty. Without that, that'll be an act of war. Because a treaty does not allow the foreigner to use the natural resources, and if they allow them to use it, they pay a tribute to use them. So survey maps are made based on grants, treaties, relinquishing jurisdiction. Now, can a sovereign sell a piece of agriculture to a foreigner in violation of a seer covenant? That's a violation. Let me explain what I mean. When the Netherlands, thank you, Professor Abdullah, for finding this case. Professor Abdullah researched and found a case when Spain, I think it was Spain, secession treaty to the United States. The Netherlands stepped up because they consider themselves to be an occupying possessor before Spain had that power to convey it, and the United States was not even formed there. So they stepped and said, wait a minute, before you was even doing business, we already was here, occupying the political dominion. And they won without even a fight. Now, let me explain what I mean. When one make a claim like the Muslim world do right now, the Muslim Arabs, the ultimate empire, the reason why they're still in power, please hear me, they are making a claim through ecclesiastical prophet, and that land that was conveyed and taken at the permission of a prophet or a prophetess, that property line cannot be moved or disturbed. So the surveys anciently has been fraud been committed, because they had no right. The people that made the treaties, cession treaties with the European powers, the European and the European powers drawing up the treaties, this is how you fall into conquest without a war, through language. When they draw it up in language, there's nobody protesting. Like under the 1744 Lancaster Convention Treaty, the Iroquois Moors came down and protested against the conveyance in treaties what England did with the people that considered indentured service more subjects to the Iroquois. Why did the Iroquois came down and oppose that? The Iroquois were talking about a Choctaw possession coming from the earth. You explain it. You explain it, Abdullah.
Autochthonous from the earth.
Yeah, yes.
Autochthonous
from
the earth.
That's right. That means from the pedigree, and also they operate on the highest principle of seership. You are conveying something that our seers say that was ours, conveyance to us by possessing through the cosmos, the unseen power.
What also deals with the first maximum law, first in time, first in law.
Yes.
So being the first in time custodian of we have been placed custodians of the earth.
Yes.
Now, I love that you brought that up, because I want to give some people some biblical reference to that, about moving your neighbor's boundary markers. Now, it's in Proverbs 22:28. It's saying, I'm just going to read two different versions. The first version is the New International Version. It say, do not move an ancient boundary stone set up by your ancestor. Okay. Now the King James Version, it say, remove not the ancient landmark which thy fathers have set.
Oh.
Now, typically it would say mother, but we understand the King James Version operates on a patriarchal system, so that's why it has the reading of father in there. Now you can also look in the Quran. It will also have readings regarding the what will take place in the event that you violate the boundaries of one of your fellow brothers and kinship. Now, also, if you look at one of the things you have to also consider when we're looking at these elements is that the Christian codes that has been placed into a civil matter. Now, you can recall that Congress deemed the Bible to be law, which to be covenants.
That's what the law. That's right.
Law of the land. So, which means that these are covenants that one could utilize for their protection, and this is one of the covenants. Now, if your boundary marker is being moved that was set up by your ancestor, that's a violation of the covenant. So that was important for you to raise that up for understanding, for people to understand that, especially when you're dealing with the autochthonous of the land as well as the ants. I don't like to say descendants because that's like saying, we are the kins. We are the kinship, and we talk about language. We're gonna throw the word family out the window because we're not servants too. We're kins, kinfolks, generation. We're generations. We have a heritage and we have a culture.
Yes.
So with that in mind, we're gonna take more look into. We're gonna go ahead and move the next piece on the board. Let's talk about the Articles of Association of October the 20th, 1774. We're going to go ahead and move upon, because there's different pieces on this board game that are being moved and played. And the thing about it is a lot of people don't know how the game is being played. Right. So the first move, you can't move a rook, you can't move a knight, you can't move a bishop, can't move the king or queen without first getting the pawns out the way. So first, let's go ahead and get the pawn out the way. And we're going to start off with the Articles of Association of October the 20th, 1774. And I'm going to read this, and let's analyze this in the context of what is being understood. Now, and as well as status. Let's look at the status in his reading. Understand the status, because as it reads, we, His Majesty's most loyal subjects, the delegates of the several colonies of New Hampshire, Massachusetts Bay, Rhode Island, Connecticut, New York, New Jersey, Pennsylvania. Now, if you also look at the writing of the word new, it'll say in the Federalist paper, it'll say New-York, New-Jersey. Pennsylvania, the 3 lower counties of Newcastle, Kent, and Sussex of Delaware, Maryland, Virginia, North Carolina, and South Carolina, deputy to represent them in a continental Congress held in the city of Philadelphia on the 5th day of September, 1774, avowing our allegiance to His Majesty, our affection and regard for our fellow subjects in Great Britain and elsewhere, affected with the deepest anxiety and most alarming apprehensions at those grievances and distresses with which His Majesty's American subjects are oppressed, and having taken under our most serious deliberation the state of the whole continent, find that the present unhappy situation of our affairs is occasioned by an erroneous system of colony administration adopted by the British ministry about the year 1763. Evidently calculated for enslaving these colonies and with them the British Empire. Brother Abdullah, could you go into this move that was made of Articles of Association that took place?
All right. They said if you heard Tamara read that the subjects are acknowledging, the British subjects are acknowledging themselves as British subjects. It is clearly there. These British subjects were born and raised in the British Dominion on Moorish soil. Their parents, British subjects, born and raised on the British Dominion and Moorish soil. Their grandparents, born and raised in the British Dominion on Moorish soil. Their great-grandparents, great-great-grandparents, born and raised in England, as British subjects. Now, still British subjects. So, what changed? Like, how did the status change? Let's really analyze that. How did the claim today, just verbally, because it's not true, that they are no longer British subjects, that they're sovereigns, that they're on equal footing as the king of Great Britain, or the crown, or the king of France, or the king of Spain, or the king of the Netherlands. They're on an equal footing. Remember, these are descendants of British subjects, but now they're sovereigns. How can that be? Give me the principle upon which that claim is made. What is the principle? We just accept it. We don't analyze because we're not taught the fundamental foundational principles. By what principle is that claim made? Let's look back 500 years, 1,000, 5,000, 10,000, 20,000 years. What did that happen? What is subjects born? Their parents are subjects, grandparents, great-grandparents, great-great-parents, and then they write construction instrument, and now they're no longer subjects. They're on an equal footing as the dukes, earls, knights, dukes, earls, the counts, barons, baroness, marquises, duchesses, king, queens. They're on the same level. Where's that based in? They're just making these claims because they know that the masses don't have the mind of a jurist. The masses, that includes the British subjects and the Moors, who are also British subjects. So British subjects and British subjects. Right. Moors, classified Negro, color, black, British subjects. Right. And then some are Spanish subjects. All right. Some are Dutch subjects. Right. All right. Some are French subjects. Moors who are French subjects. Moors who are British subjects. Moors who are Dutch subjects. Moors who are Spanish subjects. All right. On Moorish soil. On the title Negro, color, black. All right. Why you say that, Abdullah? All right. Here we go. Negro is a Spanish subject. Spain, even to this day, has claim over Negro. There's Spanish subject. An Indian is a British subject to this very day. 1926 case between Great Britain on behalf of the Kakayugi tribe and the United States. 1926 in the International Court of Justice. The well-settled case, the stare decisis case in the International Court of Justice. A Indian is a British national. 1926 case, Great Britain versus the United States. So I'm not coming out of my air. I got to give well-settled, I got to give them cases. Got to give them cases. Black, a British subject. So we're going to clear again that writing an instrument does not change. Once again, they acknowledge their status.
Yes, they wrote this article of association Terrence, let's put that back on the board. I'm not sure if you had it queued up at the time. The Article of Association, October the 20th, 1774. You have it up? Okay. They declared it. We, His Majesty's most loyal subjects. We. It didn't say we the people of America. It reads we, His Majesty's most loyal subjects. The delegates, they are delegated, appointed of the several colonies of New Hampshire, Massachusetts Bay, Rhode Island colony, put the word colony behind it, Connecticut colony, New-York colony, New-Jersey colony, Pennsylvania colony, the 3 lower counties of Newcastle, Kent, and Sussex on Delaware colony, Maryland colony, Virginia colony, North Carolina colony, South Carolina colony. They were deputed to represent them in a continental Congress. Now, the word continental is misleading. It's very misleading, and we're going to have Brother Abdullah go into that word. We're going to address that. The word continental is very misleading. Let's get into that word.
All right, before I get into it, I want to address something. I want to challenge something.
Right.
This is what I challenge.
Mm-hmm.
Thinking like a jurist, I challenge the claim that's made in this instrument that they're delegates. I challenge that. Where is the instrument from a Lord Proprietor of the colony or a royal colony? It would be a governor appointed by the crown that delegated them to be delegates. Once again, they're taking among themselves. You have the Lord Proprietors. William Penn is a Lord Proprietor. Duke of York is a Lord Proprietor. Duke of York, his brother Charles II, granted New York to his brother in 1664 in the charter. William Penn, Charles II, in 1682, granted William Penn a charter. These are 2 Lord Baltimore. These are Lord Proprietors. So this is a colonies under proprietorship. Then you have what's called royal colonies, which are whereas the governor of the colony is appointed directly by the crown. Then you have colonies that are under the corporate control, as in Virginia Company.
Right.
All right. So either the Virginia or a company. Where is the delegation authority order from a Lord Proprietor, a governor of a colony, delegating them to be delegates? They're using these names, Virginia and North Carolina and South Carolina. So when you're reading, thinking like a jurist, where is their delegation authority order? All right, so let's get into continental.
Yes, let's get into continental.
All right. Now there's 7 continents. 2 of the 7, North America, South America. And this is 1774, right? In 1774, Spain occupied the Louisiana area, Spain, in 1774. Remember, that was ceded from France to Spain in 1762. So Spain. So you have Spain. You have 1774, right? Great Britain, Canada, Northwest Territory, 13 colonies. That's Great Britain.
That was it.
So you say that's we talk about in North America now.
Right.
That colony. So Continental
You-
Congress.
Was the French still on the scene?
No, not the French was no
Okay,
longer.
French was no
yeah,
longer on the
there
scene.
there were French subjects
Right,
there,
but they had
French,
ceded their.
France had ceded.
Yes.
All right.
Okay.
So yes. Now, Continental Congress. Based on the word Continental Congress, we have an adjective there. AL is an adjective suffix ending pertaining to Congress. It's a Continental Congress. That means that based on the term that this Congress has jurisdictional control and territorial sovereignty control over the entire North America and legislating. So that's what's again, it's words, analyzing words. All right.
All right, let's make another move on this chessboard. Let's go to the Declaration of Independence of 1776 and analyze what is the Declaration of Independence? Is it a royal charter or English land grant? C, is it an English royal letter patent? D, is it a compliment letter drafted by English subjects? Oh, I'm sorry, complaint letter. Sorry, is it a complaint letter drafted by English subjects? Or E, is it an ecclesiastical decree from the Pope, whom act as a seer? What say you?
All right. Is it a decree from the Pope, the seer? We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal and endowed by their creator with certain inalienable rights. All right, I'm a subject. I am an English subject. You're an English subject. Tamara's an English subject. We got complaints. We take a piece of paper, and we have the piece of paper.
There you go.
We're drafting. We hold these truths to be self-evident. Remember, keep in mind, we're English subjects. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal and endowed by their creator with certain inalienable rights. Among these are life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. We're no longer English subjects. We're no longer English subjects, y'all. All right, where's that? Is that well settled? You're on foreign soil. Your parents English subjects, grandparents English subjects. So does the instrument make you on equal footing, make us on equal footing as the barons, dukes, earls, counts, countess, danes, duchesses? Is that well settled? What say ye? Well, you're taught in the schools that instrument, the Declaration of Independence, made them independent from Great Britain, that they declared they're independent from Great Britain.
Right. Last week they just celebrated, Ratification Day. Last month they celebrated Ratification Day. So is it a complaint letter?
It's a complaint letter.
So the answer is D.
Drafted by English subjects.
Mm-hmm.
Drafted by English subjects in the British Dominion on moist soil. Once again, a complaint letter drafted by English subjects in the British Dominion, operating in the British Dominion on moist soil.
Let's look at the drafting of this. Let's go to the 1777 drafting of Articles of Confederation. Let's look at the excerpt of the Articles of Confederation. Now it reads, "To all to whom these presents shall come, we, the undersigned delegates of the states affixed to our names, send greetings. where the delegates of the United States of America in Congress assembled, did on the 15th day of November in the year of our Lord 1777, and in the second year of the independence of America, agreed to certain articles of confederation and perpetual union between the states of New Hampshire, Massachusetts Bay, Rhode Island, and Providence Plantation, Connecticut, New York, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, Delaware, Maryland, Virginia, North Carolina, South Carolina, and Georgia, in the words of the following, viz. Now, articles of confederation and perpetual union between the states of New Hampshire, Massachusetts Bay, Rhode Island, and Providence Plantation, Connecticut, New York, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, Delaware, Maryland, Virginia, North Carolina, and South Carolina, and Georgia. Now, let's look at Article 1, because this is going to be the icing on the cake. Article 1, the style, which means the naming of this confederacy coming together shall be the United States of America. Do it read United States? Do it read U.S.A? Do it read U.S? No, it reads Article 1. The style of this confederacy shall be the United States of America. Can you go into that? Can one of your brothers go into that?
Of America. America is the political jurisdiction of the crowns. France, Spain, the Netherlands. These are political jurisdiction, like in Europe, like Phoenicia. There's a political jurisdiction that these new modern states or countries are operating in, and they call themselves in Phoenicia, Europe. That's not a country. It's not a territorial or a ancient inherent claim. It is just we're occupying a political dominion in Phoenicia, in Phoenicia, Persia, Babylon, Mesopotamia, Syria. Now we got to go back. So we got to draw it back to see what's going on here. How does this claim come? When you hear the United States of America, that is the extended territory of dealing anciently going back to the Roman Empire. See, the Roman Empire they look at the Roman Empire, it never fell. It is of the eighth, in Daniel, it is the eighth beast of the seven that go into position. The addition. That means it's the ancient last power empire. See, Rome, it conquered here. I'm talking about here, before the Sultans. The Roman Empire.
You said here.
What, in Morocco.
Okay, thank you. I just need a quantification of that.
You say in Morocco.
Okay.
And I go back, also Morocco, Amaru is called also the land of Canaan.
Okay.
Now we're going back ancient. We got to go back to our culture to see what they're doing now. The Pope is the Sultan in the American political jurisdiction and also in Europe. That's why he's called his Majesty. This is why the Emperor of Morocco met with the Emperor, the Sultan, Rome. These are Roman states. These are the new modern Roman states. The Roman Empire never fell. What the Roman Empire did was they stole the culture, was the eagle. We know how far the eagle go back. Our ancestors identified the eagle and our prophets as these all-seeing eye. When they went to the cosmos, the celestial realm, they seen the eye, the boar, the eye, the eagle. They see the man. They seen the lion. These are manifestations. How the masculine mother and father principle, there's only one nucleus, operating these manifestations. They stole it. And Roman Empire, well, yes.
I just want to pause on that eagle, because a lot of people get that confused. In my studies, I've seen where the use of the eagle started in the formation of the first state formation was in the Nadak dynasty. They call that like Dynasty 0. And that was the formation of state formation, newly state formation. And it had the aquila. It wasn't called an eagle. It has the aquila on top, and it has the 3 bars underneath. So it makes you wonder, in hindsight, is that what a 3 stripes also is apothecated from? Because you have the aquila perched on top of the 3 bars. So if you Google Nadak dynasty, it's Nadaq, or sometimes it's a K. They play with it in the search engines. You'll see it'll say Dynasty 0, and you'll see the aquila perched on top of the 3 strikes. I just wanted to interject that because there's a lot of misconception and misnomer as the eagle is theirs and the pyramid is ours. No, the heritage was formed from the first custodians of the land. So it's all culturally appropriated when it's transferred over from your colonists. They're taking what they see and using it for their good.
Absolutely.
So I just want to point that out.
No, that's true. And they stole it from ancient sea. The Moors came up with they used the eagle as the eye. The foreseeing eye mean that the Moors, when they in Amity in the sea, because a lot of battles first started at the sea before they got on the land. So what happens is the ships will go out, far out, to get news to the land that a battle is going to happen at sea. The Moors use the eagle. They would have the eagle, and they would attach a letter or a strip to the eagle paw, and they would do the eagle like this. The eagle will fly. Yes, the eagle will fly. Excuse me, because I get excited. The eagle will fly. I love our culture. The eagle will, right? The eagle will fly and go and land on the land, and then they would take the script, and that way they will read how the battery, if it started, or what's the strategy of the battle, or what the army got. The reason why that would happen, because the eagle, that's for seeing the warning people of the land. If the battle is being lost at sea and the enemy's giving a dock the shores of the native land, the eagle already go up. We losing. They'll be here within 3 days. So you shall point the eye of the eagle is the sea. That was used. The Moors used them. So that's very in our culture. Rome, which are Moors, marinated Moors, they knew this because this was handed down to them. This is why they had a symbol of the eagle. That's why the eagle is so important. So this culture, which you see they using in modern time, where they hide, that's our culture.
It's not hidden. It's not hidden. It's right in plain sight. Now, it's in the movies and everything. Like I'm not sure if everyone has, I'm quite sure everyone has watched the Game of Thrones. Now, if you watch the Game of Thrones, you will see that the aquila, aka eagle, is used as their main messenger birds. Like they will write, they will take the ink, the feather, and dip it into the ink and write, the message on the scroll, and they'll roll it up so it can go into the talon.
That's right.
So it can go into the talon of the eagle, aquila. And then the aquila will understand its direction it will need to fly in order to send a message. So if you watch Game of Thrones, you will see they are showing you the ancient practices, the practice that took place of using the aquila as the messenger. Just think about it. You have what you call the mouth. The mouth of the aquila is called the bicus, correct?
Yes.
Now the bicus, what is also shaped like the mouth of the bicus of the aquila?
Right.
No, the mailbox.
Oh yes, that's right.
The mailbox is shaped like it's the
yeah,
messenger.
yeah,
It's shaped like the bicus.
And
What else is shaped like the bicus of the aquila? The bike, I'm just going to help you out because we're on time. The bike seat, the bicycle. So just think about this. The bicycle was then also used as a messenger to carry forth. So the use of these well-settled messenger practices is still continue on to the day. So it's in plain sight. It's in your face. You just don't know what it is. But, here on Moroccan Post News, we are here to help bridge those yesterday's events for today's information and tomorrow news. So this information could never be lost. So now you'll now look at things and be able to critically analyze and take it back to the root from which it actually derived from, and stop thinking that something is separated where it's someone else hue and not doesn't belong to your hue, skin tone, which your skin tone doesn't have anything to do with it. It's about your heritage. It's all a part of your heritage and your culture. So reclaim your heritage and your culture. So we're going to take a break. We got to give our sponsors some more love. Academy of Providence. We're going to give our sponsors some more love.
Are you a deep diver for knowledge? Do you like to explore historical content of language, grammar, and law? Well, Academy of Providence is a unique certificate-based virtual learning institution with an aim to draw out a person's innate talents and abilities by imparting the knowledge of languages, epistemology, scientific reasoning, jurisprudence, positive law, history, literature, rhetoric, and more. The channels through which those abilities would flourish and serve the communities as well as the nation. Our goal is to help you dive deep into critical analysis, thinking and reasoning of these areas towards becoming philosophers or humanity of learning or humanity of science, which creates society's great artists, painters, musicians, jurists, doctors, astronomers, biologists, engineers, cartographers, surveyors, photographers, chemists, herbalists, entrepreneurs, computer scientists, teachers, politicians, and statesmen. So, if you are determined and willing to go beyond, Academy of Providence is the perfect place for you. For more information, visit our website, www.academyofprovidence.org.
All right, thank you, Academy of Providence. All right, let's go back into the drafting of the 1777 Articles of Confederation. Let's look at Article 2. Let's look at Article 2. It says each state retains its sovereignty, freedom, and independence, and every power, jurisdiction, and right which is not by this Confederation expressly delegated to the United States in Congress assembled. You want me to read Article 3? Yes. Article 3. The said states hereby severely enter into a firm league of friendship. Now that's what you talked about, the league of different states coming into a confederation. So it said the said states hereby severely enter into a firm league of friendship with each other for their common defense, the security of their liberties, and their mutual and general welfare, binding themselves to assist each other against all force offered to or attacks made upon them or any of them on account of religion, sovereignty, trade, or any other pretense whatever. All right, Abdullah.
All right, so you have there where by each state is agreeing to retain its sovereignty, its independence, its freedom. That language is constructed there. Mm-hmm. Now, that same language is not constructed in the Constitution. Right. Now, Shem, I want you to go into why isn't the Article of Confederation a constitution? So we have Articles of Confederation of 1777, which is drafted in 1777, put into force in 1781. Mm-hmm. Then you have the Constitutional Convention of 1787. So why is the Articles of Confederation a constitution? All right.
Absolutely not. And the reason why, because the population of people that was in revolt against the crown didn't have a status. They was British subjects and was not allowed to confederate as independent states without receiving a charter or being a law proprietor or having a letter of patent or royal charter as a company. They determined among themselves to be independent. when that happens without the approval of the supreme power, that's a revoke. You no longer, you're a rebel now.
Crown, right?
Yes,
That's the
it's
crown.
the crown. That's right.
So they
It gets the
making
crown.
disambiguous moves, correct?
That's right.
All right, go ahead.
And they even though it say the Articles of Confederation, meaning they are considered as populations, distribute separate, individually operating in different colonies. As they're looking at in these colonies and this dominion today, we consider ourselves to be independent states, and we're going to come into a confederation among ourselves, and we're going to war against anybody that challenge our authority. That's a revolt revolution, because the supreme power did not ordain that. The crown did not ordain it. And this is a principle. In order to become a confederation, first, you have to first be a charter state. They're not a charter state. They wasn't granted that. They wasn't given that charter. They wasn't given a patent. They wasn't granted anything. So this is a authority by force. We're gonna defend ourselves. This is why, if you read later on, they had to flee, and they had to go to the Lenape Moors in 1778. It was called the Delaware Treaty, because a sovereign will have to put their supreme stamp on recognizing these populations as political independent states. The crown never did that, but the Lenape Moors did. And by the Lenape Moors now acknowledging these are being separated states and populations, free to self-determine among themselves, and that we're going to give them the asylum and protect them. We're going to feed them, and we're going to make them a friend. When this happened, the Lord Providence was already discussing with the Iroquois to make this confederation, because you have to understand this revolt revolution would never happen with the people unless the Marquis and some of the Lord Proprietors and patent holders fell out with the crown. There was a split there. It wasn't just the planters. This is organized through ranks. Commissioners, generals, this was organized against the crown. So they never had the power. They was only acknowledged by the Lenape Moors as being independent states. Now let me say something, because nobody had never. I'm going to look at principle now. If another sovereign
I just want to pause, because we're gonna go into the enforcement in 1781. But
yes.
you mentioned something about 1778.
Yes.
In a treaty with the Lenape Moors. Now remember, we stated earlier. Now, the Lenape Moors was also a part of the Haudenosaunee Confederacy.
Yes.
that formed the Constitution, the federal government. Now, if you read the treaty with the Delaware, now if you read Article 3 of the Delaware of the 1778 treaty with the Delawares, it mentions, now I'm going to read Article 3, there's a little bit of it just to give you some content of it. It say, and whereas the United States are engaged in a just and necessary war in defense and support of life, liberty, and independence against the King of England and his adherents. And as said king is yet possessed of several ports and forts of the lakes and other places, the reduction of which is of great importance to the peace and security of the contracting parties. Now let's look at who's the contracting party. It say this articles of agreement with Confederation made and entered into by Andrew and Thomas Lewis, Esquires, commissioners for and in behalf of the United States of North America, of the one port, and Captain White Eyes, Captain John Keel Buck Jr., and Captain Pipe, deputies and chief men of the Delaware Nation of the other port, which means on the other side. So these are the contracting powers. So as Shem was just stating and giving reference to, the colonists, the subjects, they had to go to a sovereign authority in 17, you can leave that on the ground, in 1778 in order to go into a treaty protection of asylum, refugee against the King of England, in which the year before that, 1777, they had just had made an association that they were associate, you know, they were association, created an association with one another to adhere to His Majesty. So I just wanted to bring that into context as well. All right. So did you want to finish with that?
Yes. Also, before the 1783 treaty, when they went back in negotiations, was the Lord Proprietors and the Esquires went back in negotiation for the those who rebelled against the crown. One thing was what had to be taken to notice is that France and the Lenape Moors did acknowledge the rebels, the new formed states, as independent corporate states. They was acknowledged. France a sovereign. France is sovereign. The Lenapes are sovereign. Principal sovereigns. Acknowledge these rebels as a free society, a population with the right to self-determine. They was acknowledged. Just before they signed a treaty, the Lenapes, they signed a treaty with France in 1778. Now, the crown, the Lord Proprietors, and the crown and the Privacy Council took in consideration that sovereign status that was acknowledged by two other sovereigns. Because remember, they was being in the amnesty taken care of. They had to go to France because when they traveling outside the political jurisdiction, the territory of the Lenape Moors, they will be going into the French dominion, and the French could capture them and pull them and kill them. So the Esquires was definitely getting the approval they need for them to be independent. Now they could not. This we must understand. They could not go back into anywhere in the British dominion and run government.
They were on the run.
They were stuck with options. They could only live on that fort that the Lenapes gave them. That's the only capital they could live at. They could go nowhere else and take over the 7 states. Nowhere.
And that's Fort Pitt.
That's right. Now, Washington, between the 9th and 5th, there's about the 9th president that's got elected. Washington had a plan. Washington looking at more land, more jurisdiction, and he knew he could not get there unless they go back to he knew they need the colony territory to get wealth. They could not get any wealth with the Lenape territory because remember, they was being fed. They was using the pence. They were using their clothing. They was living on their land. They was burning their wood, and it was paying the Lenapes tribute. Washington said, whoa, wait a minute. We got to go back. He started talking to the Lord Proprietors to get them back into obedience to the crown, to go back and work. Remember, who's working the colony now?
Now, is that during the campaign? Is that a part of the campaign that Washington put out? What was it? Unite or Die?
I'm not.
Where it was a snake. He had the snake, and he cut the snake up into 13 pieces.
Yeah, they made a symbol out of it. Didn't they have a symbol out of that?
Well, he had this. It was a snake, and it was diced up into 13 different pieces, and it started off from Massachusetts Bay all the way down to Florida, and it was unite or die, basically, because they were in violation against the king.
Yep. So
Washington ran that campaign for unity with the different states. So as we look at the enforcement, the 1781 enforcement of Articles of Confederation, we're going to talk about secession and ceding, because it's important to look at these words and its content. Now, secession, is a Latin word meaning a giving up and retain. That meaning throughout the world, evolution passing through Old French and Middle English pretty much untouched. Now, Max Planck Encyclopedia of International Law Secession is an understanding under international law by which territory is transferred from one state to another with the consent of both states. Now, it's a consent, not by force. It's a consent of both states. Now, that you also have the evidence of that in 1492 with the Spanish, with the Moors ceding its jurisdiction over to in 1492. So that's when we say territory is transferred from one state to another with the consent of both states. Now you also have secession is the act of giving up something, usually land, by the agreement in a formal treaty. Now you have the 1492 treaty, and in international laws, secession commonly refers to land transferred by treaty. Now there's a difference between secession and relinquish. Relinquish is to grant, transfer, or to convey, which is separate meaning. So let's go back to right. So let's just go back to secession, which is let's look at the meaning of secession. It's the act of giving up something, usually land, by the agreement in a formal treaty. Now you want to touch on that, Shem?
Yes. Now let's look at you can hear the word secession. First of all, there's no land. There's no land conveyed. What happens is the occupying sovereignty and dominion of jurisdiction and possessive rights over the people, the subjects, is given from one power to another power, but it does not disturb the inherent right of the native people, the Moors, of the people of the territorial land. That right cannot be secession away. When that happens, that means I'm the occupying power, sovereign power here by the native people. I transfer that jurisdictional power over to you. That means you only have jurisdiction over the subjects. You don't have it over the territorial sovereignty, over consanguinity, culture, the people of the land. So when people start hearing that, they panic and say, "See, but that's not dealing with that." Even though it say land, you're only transferring the legal authority of the occupying parties that was given that power through treaty over to another occupying party. But that don't give them the rights to come on the land and take away the possession rights that the indigenous people had before the treaty was even drawn up. So when France ceded to Great Britain the territory, that gave Great Britain political power to exercise its crownship power over the territorial sovereignty. Meaning that not the land, because the land, the indigenous people own the land, but it was able to say the jurisdictional power over the subjects. She's all about the people. So the crown can only control and regulate what's a subject to her or him. If the native people, before they even stepped on the shores, was never a indentured servant or subject to them. They signed a treaty. When they signed it, like Professor Abdullah say, it did not say that we give up our personal rights and our inherent rights. That's not in the treaty. No, and we give up all our land to you to do it with it as it is. The agriculture, the water, it doesn't say that in the treaty. So you got to see they're playing the land. They throw the land in there and make you think that, oh, the land is theirs. No, that's not true. You have to be a jurist to see that. If he's in a world court, that will come up. What do you mean when you say you ceded land? What do you mean you ceded land? They have to look back. In order for one to cede land to another occupying sovereignty, where do you derive the authority to cede that land? We need a treaty or instrument to have land. Now, you didn't use jurisdiction, you say land. That could be, because if you say that you ceded the land to them, that means we can't occupy, we can't use it. That has to be challenged. Now, if you say I ceded you dominion title, jurisdiction, that's jurisdiction over its creation, the subjects, and over what they make or what they do, they plant or what they get. That's what the seed power is over, not the indigenous people or the territorial power of the people. That's why Great Britain acknowledged this in the 1856 General Treaty between Great Britain and Morocco, one of the greatest treaties that I ever read in my life, besides the 1744 Lancaster Treaty. Why did the crown use, when the Moors, notice Moors, not Indians, not Mexicans, not Negroes, Moors. When a Moor is a defendant in the British Rim, the British dominions, that the Moor has original jurisdiction. What is the crown doing? It is acknowledging the right to territorial sovereignty that the Moors had before they entered the treaties with these European powers. This is also acknowledged in the Acta Algeris. This is very well acknowledged. So we have to very pay attention when we read these words, even though we see cession treaties, they did this, they did this. But the fact of the matter is, when an argument, international dispute comes up, did the occupying sovereign have a right to cede the land? See, we talking about land now. We're not talking about you saying land. What do you mean? That has to be defined.
Now, there's been a play on words.
Yes.
With the word native. Now, when children of the day open up their school books and they say this is a native, they're not looking at someone that look like you and I, correct?
That's right. That's right. That's right.
So there's been a play with the word native. You know, there's been a play with the word America. Who's American? Who's not American? There's a play with the word, you know, when you talk about jurisdiction here, you have Native American, then you have American. There's just plays going on with, there's different movements on the board with the different language that appear. Now, you said something that jumped out to me. You spoke about you were speaking about, oh my gosh, the land.
Yes.
You was talking about the land. Okay, now how the land, the understanding that you are having a autonomous claim to the land from the earth. Now, people today, they're looking at this, they say, okay, you're talking about a treaty of, you're talking about a treaty of 1700s, 1800s, even early 1900. How does this apply today, where you have the people that are natives, autochthonous, indigenous to the land? How does this apply to the people today for them to have a true understanding of their right of self-determination, of their right to proclaim who they are without a doubt or contradiction, without being forced into racial assimilation of racial constructs such as Black, Negro, color, which has taken us out of the kinship of our inheritance of being able to claim our birthright inheritance to the land? How does this affect each and every one of us today?
Well, we want to make it very clear that there's no treaty on the world. There's no treaty that the Moors ever entered into with any European powers that gives Moors the right to make an autochthonous claim. No treaty does that. So we're going to put the treaties to the side. We talk about autochthonous claim rising from the earth. No treaty does that. Meaning, if Moors make an autochthonous claim based on treaty, they're giving up their birthright. Please hear me. If you point to any treaty and making an autochthonous claim based on treaty, that means you're making an autochthonous claim based on a treaty with France. a treaty with England, the treaty with the Netherlands, Sardinia, Great Britain, United States. That's improper. That's not well settled. On the Talkships claim, 10,000 years, 20,000 years, 30. Let's go by 40,000.
What is your 10,000
What-
to your 400?
So let's go to 17. Let's go to the 1744 Lancaster Treaty. Great Britain and the Iroquois, the Haudenosaunee Confederation convened in Lancaster. Great Britain poking her chest out. 300 years.
They were peacocking.
We've been here for 300 years. Well, what does 300 years have to do with rising from the earth? That's an Talkships claim.
Checkmate.
They said 300 years. We say rise from the earth. That's what the Talkships claim. So they did not make a claim based on any treaty to land. The Talkships claim. I just gave you something that's well settled. A treaty. Want to add to that, Shem?
That's Abdullah is right, because he's going back. And remember that was a convention, because a sovereign met another sovereign to dispute of land. And the Iroquois was letting Great Britain know that you can't be owners of any land. So we're looking at a jurisdictional thing here, and we're looking at a territorial claim here. Great Britain made a claim that they was deeded. They talk about deeds because there was a Ninico. The Ninico, I believe, in the 15th century was deeding land. Ninicos were a tribe part of the Lenanapes. And the Iroquois' position was this: a subject or indentured servant cannot enter into a treaty or make any decisions about the land, even the land that they live, even though they consider as a nation, but their nation is servitude and subject to their kinsmen, their cousins, their brothers and sisters. By being in that capacity indentured to your brothers, now let's gotta go back to the Torah. You know good and well in the Torah, you was indentured servant to your brother or someone else, you didn't have a right to make decisions even on your own land. If that party came on and you became a indentured servant and they worked your land and they gave you the things you need, there was a period, a contract period. And you could not do as you will with your own affairs under that contract. Then the Jubilee kicked in, a new beginning. See, remember you gotta go back to jurisprudence here, positive law. So when you make a claim that I am a direct kinsmanship, descent heir of ancient people that inhabit this land for about, let's say they go back and say for the last 40,000 years. And you've been here, you come off a boat across the water and met with a group, a tribe down here, and you have been doing agreements in our land. And you want to take this agreement and say that you got sovereign power as you are supreme equal with us. Principal law does not permit that. Does not, because a servant cannot enter into agreements. A servant doesn't have an equal standard as his supreme and superiors. So the treaties, the Iroquois acknowledge the treaties to be void.
Now, Shem, there's a well-settled fear, right? And this well-settled fear it became like a ball of chain. It became first a ball of chain on the physical body, where our people became prisoners of war, placed in forced servitudes. Now there were migrations of people, not the transatlantic slave trade. We'll get into that. We can dissect that as well at a later time. There was some migration of some that was moved from one territorial to another territory, and that's mixing the people up to confuse you of your area. Because you got to remember, our people, our ancestors were nomadic. They went throughout the entire earth plane and settled throughout the earth. So it was not anything for our ancestors to one moment be in one territory, in another territory, and then once that territory no longer was conducive for their survival of life, for their generation, they were able to just move to another regional territory. And sometimes they may have to go into their kinfolk's territory to be able to sustain life, because it may have had better soil content and things of that nature. Exactly. Yes. So, we always migrated. That was a part of what we did then and what we also do today. We continue to migrate and move for better areas of improvement. So with that being said, as we continue along the path of understanding and towards enlightenment, our people, it has moved from a physical bondage to a mental bondage, right? And in that mental bondage, it has become a fear factor of this story of the claim has never been made that they're not from this land mass. The claim has never been made. It's always been made that they are not from here. Somehow we overlooked that, and there's this well set of fear that we were enslaved. We became prisoners of war over commerce. Let's look at it like that. But after the war is over, there's laws within war where you can no longer keep a person in bondage for perpetuity. That's a violation of nature. That's a violation of nature's law. Now, keep in mind, civilization, cultural norms are based off nature's law. That's where it's derived from. So when these things occur, our people have settled into the fear of not coming back to the ancient customs and practices, and we have assembled into our oppressors' way of moral code, statutes, ordinance. And now it gets to the point where you don't even see and understand where your fear, your misery is not outweighing your fear. So you rather stay miserable as well as not understand. And then we have what we call so-called, I say leader guys and girls who have become the great gatekeepers of our oppressors, who will go and work within the foreign jurisdictional occupational zone to keep the rules at bay. And now our people are really in a state of perpetual fear and not understanding that your sovereignty is in divinity. It's not based in a treaty. It's not based in a statute. It's not based in a United Nations rights of declarations of all that stuff. It's not based in organizational states, rights of a child. It's not based in that. Your sovereignty is based in divinity. Your ability to move like the wind, your ability to move like the water, your ability to be strong like within the earth. That's where your sovereignty is derived from. And until our people come to an understanding that we will never be a people that will rise up and get the assistance of the Creator, because we are trapped into someone else's ideology of who we should be and what we should be. Could you elaborate on that just a little bit?
One of the great examples of overthrowing a people without war, because you can never point to the Moors being beat in war by Albions or amalgamated Moors. There have been wars, but there have been peace treaties. But there's a new war that's been waged, and like Professor Abdullah said, is ways to a denotation and connotation in language, and how that is waged. I'm gonna give you a prime example. In Granada, when the Moors in Granada followed the doctrine of Mohammedanism as a seer, the prophet as a seer, the seer book, the Quran, ruled. It ruled. The moment that Queen Isabella and the Pope came up with a plan to see, you have to learn language, to convert the people to give over their political allegiance to Catholic faith that's disguised as under the form of Christianity. Catholicism is a doctrine. Christianity is divinity. They disguise it. The moment that they converted the people gave over their allegiance to the new seer, which is the Pope, the Catholic magistrate. When that happened, in the power structure of the nation, there became a division. 70% became Catholic, 30% was Muhammad followers. So the Muhammad followers that had the ball and chain of ruling fists agree before the nation go to a civil war. They're allowed to enter into a treaty. And Abdullah, you can break the treaty down more than I bet it I can. The Granada Treaty at King Isabella and the Pope, and how they entered, but they made a treaty to protect them. Even though you got Mohammedanism and you got Catholic, they still made an agreement to protect the native Moor, called cultural rights, possession rights, talking this claim to the land. That was protected. See, in that treaty, that right to territorial sovereignty was protected. And that's what you need to go and read the Granada Treaty and read a history on it, and you see what I'm saying. 14 what? 92, yes.
Yeah, 1492.
Yes.
Treaty of Granada.
Yes.
Yeah, November 25th, 1491. It was signed by Abu Muhammad and put into force in January 1492.
Now, before we get into the Treaty of Paris of 1783, I just have a thought-provoking question. How is it that the autochthonous, native, indigenous of the entire earth have a well-settled problem and fear of claiming their divine sovereignty, whereas you have ones that have proclaimed their sovereignty through the doctrine of, what is it, Judaism, a Jewish, an Amish, a Mennonite. But keep in mind, that claim is also based on divinity as well. It's still based on divinity. So where is this well-settled fear continue to hover and perpetuate itself within the people that are autochthonous, native, indigenous, classified, misnomered as Black, Negro, colored? Abdullah, I want you to take that.
It's called constructive language.
Thank you.
Constructive language. We have pastors. There are thousands of churches in our communities. The South is called the Bible Belt. Why? The South alone. I remember being, when I was in Chicago, let me talk Chicago. And we was on, what's the guy who was the one who was killed, the little boy came from the South to Chicago. Emmett Till Boulevard. And in a 10-block radius, I counted a 10-block radius. I counted 20 churches. Like you could actually walk the 10 blocks. These churches said, because I gotta say, I have to say it because in order to answer the question, I gotta be specific. The churches that well-settled fear the lack of knowledge of who we are. So we have churches and schools, two institutions that in all our communities. In all of our communities, we have churches and schools. Those two institutions are the institutions that maintain and facilitate our mental oppression. Those two, churches and schools. I have to name them. I have to say it. Because in order to answer the question, I have to identify the institutions, churches and schools. It's very important. What will liberate our people? Proper guidance. They need a lighthouse. They need a lighthouse. The lighthouse is the knowledge of the galactic cross. The lighthouse is the knowledge of Christianity in its original intent and application. The lighthouse is the knowledge of your nationality, your history, your culture, your philosophy, these treaty protection. The lighthouse. Without that, the fear will be maintained because they have nothing to point to. They, because they're looking at the United States as being the authority. They look at the Europeans as being the authority. That's where the fear comes from, the lack of knowledge. That's it. The fear comes from the lack of knowledge of our nationality, our history, our culture, our philosophy, our holidays, our folkways, our mores. That's where the fear comes from. How do you instill the confidence? Just reverse it. Just give them the knowledge of their Moorish nationality, their history, the culture, the philosophy, jurisprudence, Moorish treaty protection. That's it. It's not complicated. It's not something to, that's so complicated. Just reverse it. So we need institutions of learning. We need, all right, my bad. We need more institutions.
I said we have one,
The
Academy of Providence.
More institutions
Yes.
of learning, more literature, more teachers,
Yes.
more jurists, more scholars. We have very few scholars in our communities. I'm not talking about Moors classified Negro, color, black with these PhDs. I'm not talking about, all right, let me hear me out.
Please quantify that.
I had to qualify that.
because
I said we have very little scholars in our communities. Let me qualify that. All these HBCUs, scholars don't come out of them. All these HBCUs, no scholars come out of that. Those colleges, none. They don't come out of that. You cannot say, Abdullah, cannot say to me that scholars come out of HBCUs and they was there for 4 years and they're still saying they're black. Once I hear that, I don't have to hear anything else. I don't have to hear anything else. If they're saying they're black, we're black, they cannot liberate our people. I don't care divinity degree, history degree, sociology degree, PhD, LLD, jurisprudence, whatever D with JD. If they're saying we're black, what did Barack Obama say when he was on Tom Joyner?
He said he's not black.
Barack Obama, when he was on Tom Joyner, his first term, after he got elected his first term, he was on Tom Joyner's morning show. Tom Joyner introduced Barack Obama as the first black president of the United States. Barack Obama said, black, what did he say?
He said, I'm not black.
I'm not black. Black is a fiction in law.
Yes. Google it.
Now,
YouTube
of course,
is there.
that went over people's head. These people from HBCUs with these master's degrees, PhDs, JDs, so-called scholars, a nerve of Barack Obama. A nerve of Barack Obama. these HBCUs, quote unquote scholars in our communities, are nerve of Barack Obama.
You know what came to mind? I just have to say it, Cornel West, because he was one of the main peacockers
Of
against
course,
that
that's what I
statement.
said.
I know
He's one of them. Let me say his name.
Cornel West.
again.
Oh my God, he
Say
was
it again.
Cornel West.
Oh, thank you.
He was peacocking against
He's
that
one- he's what-
statement.
he's the
So
one-
what
he's the
is
one I'm talking
he?
about. That's
Now
right.
he's a professor at what?
Princeton University.
Right, and he peacocked against that
A
statement
nerve
so
of Barack
hard.
Obama.
That's why I laughed. He peacocked so hard. I swear,
Say he's
I was
not black.
shocked. Right, because you claim to be a professor at one of the chartered schools of the Crown, Princeton. Let's call it what it is. It is a private eleemosynary, which means gift school of the Crown. Look it up. He's a professor there, tenured. And he almost blew a gasket for Barack spilling a secret. So what does that make him? A gatekeeper for the oppressor. Let's just call it what it is. Let's just call it what it is. And we have a lot of gatekeepers in Congress. You have a lot of gatekeepers in the Senate. You have a lot of gatekeepers in your state and local government. You have a lot of gatekeepers in the schools and the churches. They're all around you.
Anytime you rise to the level of a doctorate degree, see the problem with us, like Professor Abdullah say, the reason why we stay under fear is because we put people up as statues, trophies, and they forerunner, they did this, and then we praise them. We look at it, see, but when I look at their whole life, their writings and stuff, I could never catch them saying treaties, saying this our land, saying who we are, saying we these ancient people, saying that this what this ancient land is. And I don't want to say no doctor's name because there's a lot of them they call scholars, but I have not ever seen them ever talk about government, that this and that. So they just talk alone for the money.
Right, they got to continue to line their pocket up. It becomes their way of life. They write these wonderful cultural, archaeological books, anthropology books. They write these wonderful bodies of literature that help unlock. You can kind of just say it doesn't unlock anything. It kind of like, you know how you have the window panes and you can like just break a hole out of it and just kind of see through a little bit better if it was all dusty. Let's just say we're just breaking a little hole out of the window pane so we can just see a little bit farther. So they write these cultural anthropology books, but if you dissect the language of that, you would immediately stop in your tracks. Now, don't throw the baby out with the bathwater, because sometimes you can take the misplacement of the word, place the proper word in its place, and then it'll have a better reading. That's the only way sometimes I can read some of the books, because the language is totally screwed.
Yes.
The language is totally screwed.
Let me say this point. Moors and Masonry. I didn't use there's no African American, Negro, colored, black scholars that I've referenced in Moors and Masonry. I'm saying, all right, we've been studying treaties and conventions and acts and covenants. I mean, where are what African, Negro, black, color scholar that we use to reference for our literature? Like,
no.
I'm saying, so like we don't even use, like, who do we point to that we even use? You know, now J. Rogers, all right, I'll use like J. Rogers is one of the few. J. Rogers, Joy Rogers, Nature. You have
Eric Snowden.
Snowden.
Yeah.
You got Snowden, J. Rogers. Just a few others. Iron Man Surd. Well, Iron Man Surd is not classified as black. Those are two that I can.
What about Pimentel? What about Pimentel? What is his name?
No, he's more. Not Conscious Moore.
He's a
Jose
Conscious Moore.
Pimentel Bay is a Conscious Moore.
Okay.
So he's no, yeah. Just those two.
Oh, you said that of that category. Of the
Yes.
classification category. Okay,
Yes.
okay, gotcha.
Yes. So let me say this, Shem. There's nothing wrong with us because we are pointing to our ancestors as statue of. So the problem is that our people are not, those people are not lighthouses. All right. I mean, Shem, Tamara,
Mm-hmm.
aren't we want the people to look to the Academy of Providence? We want people to look to the Academy of Providence as a lighthouse. I mean, let's be real.
Absolutely.
All right. So
It's a pointer.
right.
It's a pointer.
So
It's not the answer to the question, because the Academy of Providence mission. Let's just read that, Abdullah. Let's just
Yes.
read that. Let's read the Academy of Providence mission. And the reason why I'm saying that, because I know there's a lot of parroting that goes on in studies. And then people do not have the depth of understanding of how things are derived. And I don't have my glasses on, but I'm gonna make it through. How things are derived and come to. So I'm gonna go to the About Us page. Go to academyofprovidence.org. I'm gonna go to the About Us page, and it say our mission. Now, in writing this mission, there's two things that Professor Sore and I sat down and discussed. And we looked at the 1908 General Board of Education mission. Now, were we looking to copy it or emulate it? No. We were looking to look at these words and see the well settled play on words and sorcery that's derived within that mission of the Board of Education. And if someone just go and Google the 1908 General Education Board mission, it'll become quite shockingly when you really digest it, or try to go through and evaluate it. Now, what we did, we countered that sorcery in our mission and value in our vision. And it say our vision is to restore the nature of education. Education means to lead out. Now, I know a lot of people have heard education is animal training. We're not animals. We are spiritual living beings.
It doesn't mean that.
It does not mean that.
It doesn't mean that.
Education means to lead out. And so to restore the nature of education. And so it's your innate gift within you, what's in you, to bring that out, that gift within, to restore the nature of education into society that will draw out a person's innate talents and abilities by imparting the knowledge of languages. Epistemology is how we know knowledge, scientific reasoning, jurisprudence, which is positive law, history, literature, rhetoric, etc. The channels through which those abilities will flourish and serve. Whom they will serve? They will serve the nation. They will serve the restored Moorish nation, because mother is asleep and mother is waiting just to be tapped on the shoulder. It doesn't take a shaking or a beating to wake mother up, so we can be restored to matriarchal principles of restoring the nation back to its peace and glory. Now, our mission at Academy of Providence, in manifesting, the mission of Academy of Providence is to promote the restoration of critical thinking. So our mission, as we say, critical thinkers, we do not give the answers. We just we point to the proper direction for one to analyze for their own critical thinking, to bring out that what's in them, to have a full understanding. They can stand on it. They can well stand on it and not be shaken or moved. Now, the critical thinking, which is molded into the epistemological tradition of conventional education. Now, through the illumination of the past to anticipate the future, generations will yield onto their intellectual, critical, philosophical, and intuitive mind. So if you look at the 1908 General Board of Education, the General Board of Education, their main mission was to train. They were not looking for scholars, philosophers, painters. They were not looking for men of valor, not even of embryos. So they were not looking for that. They were looking for those to train for their colonization, for their commerce. So we have obtained these wonderful degrees. I know I have 1, 2, 3. I have 3 of them. How many you got, Abdullah? Abdullah has 2. I have associate's, bachelor's, master's. Abdullah's got a bachelor's, master's. Shem has a master's of life. Trust me, that is more powerful. That is more powerful than the years that we spent in the thousands of fiat commercial paper exchange. I felt cheated. When I attained my master's degree, I said, this is not it. I was thoroughly disgusted, not satisfied. And I knew it was time to navigate and move to be able to dig into the Akashic records of truth. And that led me to where I am today in meeting my brother Abdullah Talib Mosi Bey and Shem Malachi Bey. They have been great pointers of the truth. They do not give answers. Academy of Providence do not give answers. It points you to the direction to critically think. So we would definitely like for you to look into explore that as your guide. Now, and also because that's an area that's what's needed. That is needed. Now, as we're looking at these words, we're going to get back to seeded and relinquish. As we're looking at these words, we're going to go to the 1783, where it talks about the word relinquish in Article 1 of the definitive peace treaty between Great Britain and the United States of 1783, also known as the Treaty of Paris. Now, it reads, His Britannic Majesty acknowledges the said United States, viz., New Hampshire, Massachusetts, Bay, Rhode Island, and Providence Plantation, Connecticut, New York, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, Delaware, Maryland, Virginia, North Carolina, South Carolina, and Georgia to be free, sovereign, and independent states, that he treats with them as such, and for himself, his heirs and successors, relinquishes. Now, relinquish means, we said the word relinquish means to grant.
No, leave.
Leave, okay. Transfer, convey.
No, all right.
Relinquish, okay. So we're going to go into relinquish.
Yes.
Relinquishes all claims to the government, propriety, and territorial rights of the same in every part thereof.
All right. So we have the listed. We have the words relinquish, grant, transfer, convey.
Mm-hmm.
Those are separate words.
Then we talk about language.
Right. Relinquish doesn't mean grant or transfer or convey. Those are listing of separate words, and I wanted to replace those words so we can look at all of them. All right. The word convey, cede, grant do not appear in the Treaty of Paris between Great Britain and United States. That's the Treaty of Paris, also known as the Treaty of Paris of 1783. Relinquish etymologically means leave, which means Great Britain sat down, negotiated. It was called the Treaty of Paris because it was negotiated in Paris. Signed in Annapolis, Maryland, negotiated in Paris, negotiated in 1782 in Paris. Great Britain. So you have the Crown, who appointed someone who to negotiate on the Crown and Privy Council's behalf, negotiating with British subjects now. They were born British subjects now. That's what he's, born right across the table, born as British subjects. When the British crowns met with France in 1762, treaty was signed in 1763. They sat with another sovereign. a sovereign and a sovereign. Sovereign and sovereign. 1782, a sovereign subject. Sovereign subject. Keep that in mind. Relinquish. That's the most important word in the entire treaty. It does not mean convey, cede, grant. The etymology of the word relinquish means leave. Great Britain agreed to what? To remove the troops. So Great Britain agreed to take her hands off, but maintain what? The interest tie, fiduciary tie. And you see that, we'll see that in part 3 as we go into the treaties and go into the cases. The cases are based on that 1783 Treaty of Paris between Great Britain and the United States. That's part 3. That's next month. We'll go in depth with about 15 to 20 different treaties.
Okay, so in essence, it's like mothers say, okay, you're grown now. I'm gonna go ahead and go about my way and be in my house.
That's it. That's a good analogy.
I'm gonna go ahead and
Good
be in my
analogy.
house.
That's a good analogy.
And then I'm gonna let you stay in this house, but I still own the rights to this house.
That's a good analogy.
It's still mother's house. So,
That's a good analogy.
the children can't rise higher than the mother, correct?
Explain that.
That's trust law. No, you just explain trust law.
Right.
The settler, if the settler does not convey to the trustee the power and rights over property, then the trustee cannot usurp that right, nor the fiduciary,
Right.
nor the beneficiaries.
Right. Even in revocation, even during the revocable period, if it's not conveyed in the trust that upon death, that the rights, the legal title rights goes to the beneficiary, it remains
Right, with the heirs.
with the grantor, with the settler.
That's right, absolutely. That's right, because it was never conveyed to the trustee, a trust, or to the beneficiary. So that right that the settler had always would stay with the settler. That's right, absolutely.
Correct. So who's the brother? The crown.
Yep.
So we look at these moves. We're coming down to the end, and we're going to pause here. We're going to pause at this point because we're going to pick back up on part 3, checkmate the crown on the United States, because we have a breadth of information. Let's just give some context. Why is this information so vital and important today? Because this is yesterday's. These are yesterday's moves, right? We said Moroccan Post News deals with yesterday's events, right? These are events that happened yesterday. Yesterday's events for today's information and tomorrow's news, which means for generations to come. This is the news that our children should already know, correct? This is what they should already know. So let's analyze in context. When you have a chance to go back and rewind, we spoke of yesterday's events. How does this information affect right now today when we're talking about jurisdiction and fiduciary?
All right, let me talk about my personal experience. For 25 years, I taught thousands of people misconcept, miseducation for 25 years. Thousands. I have to talk about this experience because you're asking why is this important. We got to set the table right. I taught for 25 years thousands of people that we, the people of the United States, in the preamble, are the Moors. I taught for 25 years thousands of people that 35 Moors were at the United States Constitutional Convention in March 1787 to September 1787. I taught thousands of Moors for 25 years that the federal government of the United States, the settlers of the federal government of the United States, is the Moors. 25 years, thousands of people. I'm passionate about this to get this right. To teach for 25 years, thousands of people, miseducation, misconcept. I am passionate about this.
That was handed down to you.
Handed down to me.
Mm-hmm.
For 25 years, thousands of people, I taught that Moors are part and parcel / part and partial of the United States. I taught for 25 years, thousands of people, that Moors are the founders of the United States. I taught for 25 years, thousands of people, that that United States is that the real name of this government, United States government, is the Moorish government. 25 years. That's why I'm passionate about this. I will find over 200 cases. I will find over 200 references, 400 references I have to. Day and night, Terrence can admit, day and night, I call Terrence 4, 6 o'clock in the morning. I am passionate about this. 25 years. If anyone has taught a misconcept, a miseducation for 25 years to thousands of people, you will be just as passionate as I am.
All right, Shem. What say you?
Yes, I was hearing
Abdullah, passion is amazing. Let me just say this, Shem, before you get started. You know, his passion is amazing. I'm just going to give a quick epilogue of my story. I remember meeting Brother Abdullah, what was it, January of 2018. And he said, well, when we first met, you know, he was like, well, you know, I have class starting, etymology class starting in PASEP up at Temple University, PASEP educational program. I was like, okay. So he showed me, went online and signed up. I went online and signed up. It was 35 notes. And the class was starting that Monday. I met him that Friday. Class was starting that Monday. He was like, come to my class. So when I got in his class, I really thought he was punking me, y'all. I mean, I was like, I'm like, what is this man talking about? I mean, here I have a master's degree. I should know this by now. I really thought he was playing a joke and punking me and trying to embarrass me in front of his class. So I was like ready to leave. And he was like, no, just give me an opportunity to really explain this to you. You know, and I said within myself, I remember crossing that stage and this man was handing me this degree. And I remember feeling so disenchanted and saying, this is not it. And I was like, Tamara, don't miss your opportunity to walk past what could be it, what could be the truth. And I resolved myself and sat down. And here we are today. So I know a lot of times it's hard to digest it when you first hear it. And sometimes you have what people may see, well, God, you know, his passion and just make him sound crazy or look crazy. But that's what the truth is. It looks crazy. It looks strange, right? It looks in the beginning. And then when you really see the well-settled plays and the pawns moving in the wrong direction, because there's an order to the chessboard, you know, how things should move. And when things are being moved out of place and moved in the wrong way, you should be able to check that. You should be able to check that at the door. And so that's what we're here now. We're showing how the game is being played on the board and how there's moves are being made and they're the wrong moves and things must be placed back in order. So that's what I just wanted to share with you. Shem, what would you want to share about your experience with just being able to share, be a light, be a lighthouse?
I was awakening about the Moorish movement through Professor Abdullah Bey, I believe in 2005. What I was fascinated about Professor Abdullah Bey was the etymology. Because the first time in my life, I never knew that words could strip you of. Like you say, what you don't know won't hurt you. Abdullah Bey let me know that what you don't know will hurt you. And from there, I've been on an awakening spell, but like Professor Abdullah say, I was going by patterning, you know, people that started, you know, just to talk about what happened like 60, 70, 80 years ago, but it was never no proof, no evidence, works. There's never no word. I never explored researching it because I took for face value. See, when you just take for faith don't take something for faith. Research it and find out to get confidence and then trust it first.
Mm-hmm.
And then as time went on, I started being dealt with in different ways that, other Moors wasn't dealt with. And the one thing kept me though sound was when Professor Abdullah taught the language. Even though I heard David Wayne Miller, but I'm talking about the way Professor Abdullah broke it down into an elementary form. Because I used to buy all his stuff. I used to buy a lot of his stuff. And I used to stay up at nighttime reading and looking at the word of suffix. And believe me, we've been bewinked. We've been taken advantage of. We've been raped. But as time went on, I realized after the research, wait a minute. And I'm not going to say, but the so-called Moors that's supposed to be illuminating and enlightening people was wrong themselves.
Mm-hmm.
They wasn't right.
Right. I experienced that.
So then when you start to say, but I can't read that or find that, I look back, I can't find none of that information. None of that history or writings or instruments. Now you're being disliked. So it's experience that's just hard to break down. But when you place in this position that Abdullah, Tamara, and me is placed in, you're going to be disliked more than you loved.
That's okay.
You're going to be loved by the Moors that's coming out of the coma. You're going to be loved by them. You're going to be disliked by the ones that claim to be enlightened, illuminated. Them the ones that's going to have a hatred for you because they can't do the elementary thing that I can do, Professor Abdullah and Tamara can do, is say, we just been following the wrong thing, saying the wrong thing, and misleading other people by our example, and it didn't get us nowhere. There's no salvation to remedy that.
Mm-hmm.
I rest my case.
Well, thank you once again for tuning in to Moroccan Post News, our monthly digital news. Now, tune in. We will be back on March the 11th, 2022, this year. We'll be back on March 11th at 7:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We will continue our series of part 3 of Checkmate, the Crown on the United States. We'll get more into the 1783 Treaty of Paris and its excerpt into the Northwest Ordinance and its charter creation, how that area transcended and formed through the charter. So we're going to get into that, and then we're going to go into case studies. So you will be able to point you to some case studies in law to understand the territorial boundaries and markers. Territorial, not land, not territorial. I'm sorry, jurisdictional, not territorial, jurisdictional markers that are layered over the territorial markers. So in order to one can be able to see how to properly navigate through this one of what we have going on in this society. Like I said, Sunday, stay tuned on our Facebook page. We will be posting on our Facebook and YouTube page on Sunday at 3:00 p.m. State of the Nationals will be featured on Crom TV. We are very excited about this joint venture with Crom TV to be able to tap into a vast market of people who are seeking knowledge and understanding. We are very excited about that. We had an event on January the 23rd. It was Unity, the Great Awakening Unity, in which all various Moors, conscious and unconscious, from very different doctrines very different doctrines. You had one from the church, Christians, you had one from the Hebrew Israelite, various doctrines that assembled on a panel, and we all came to have an understanding of what must be done in order to move this needle. There's been a movement, but not a moving. There's a difference. There's been movements going on, but there's the moving of being able to reclaim your sovereignty without molestation or being trying to be forced back into assimilation into a foreign society, that continues to be plagued upon the autochthonous, indigenous, native people within Morocco. So once again, thank you for tuning in to Moroccan Post News. See you March the 11th at 7:30 p.m. Part 3, Checkmate, the Crown Owns the United States. Have a good evening.